It's my honour to be with you here this afternoon to moderate this great session as part of the Internet Commerce Summit 2021. Again, my name is George Pepis. I've been in the retail industry or working with retailers for a very long time now, looking at their technology needs. And I'm really excited about today's session. So essentially for the rest of this session, we will be gathering the inputs from our fantastic panel. And to learn more about how supply chains are being impacted by the new expectations that Anish was talking about, the 2-hour delivery time and guarantees that customers now have, how are these expectations pushing the need for inventory visibility across supply chains, and what is the technology that will be driving this? Now, what I want to be able to do is also get your inputs in this as well. So please let us know if you do have any questions. We will try and get them answered as part of the session. But first, I want to start off by introducing our panelists, or at least getting our panelists to talk a little bit about themselves. So let's start with you, Anil Menon. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and your role within Lulu Group.
Oh, thanks, George. So Anil Menon, I head IT for Lulu Group India. The portfolio has all retail, malls, hospitality, logistics, and flight kitchen. While we have this diverse way of working, previous to this, I was working with Tata Starbucks, Tata Tesco, so a couple of retailers. And also on the other side of the technology platform, where some companies like Zinsas and others. More over a decade and a half, or more than a decade, I say, experience in retail domain. That's more what I am.
Thank you, Anil. Now to our next member, Dr. Anil Shinatabanda. Just a little bit about yourself in the Landmark Group.
G'day, Georgie. Thank you for that. And good morning, everyone. It's been a wonderful, I think, experience to share and then also, hear some of our co-panelists actually talk about the agile supply chains and all that. I work for actually Landmark Group India, which has Lifestyle, Max, Easy Buy, and then, Spar, supermarkets, all of that. So predominantly today, I'll be probably talking about what's happening with apparel retail, footwear accessories, and so on. So prior to Landmark Group, which has been almost now 10 years now, prior to that, I used to, work at Woolies and then Coles actually back in Australia. And then, done a lot of consulting around APAC actually. So it'll be great actually to not only to share my experiences, what's happened particularly in the last 18 months. It'll also be great to hear my co-panelists actually talk about similar subjects from their industry as well. Thank you.
Excellent. And that's now I know why you said g'day perfectly. That was absolutely brilliant. So thank you, Dr. Anil. Mansi, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Swiggy?
Thank you, George. Wonderful seeing and being part of this entire panel. I am Mansi Pakade. I'm working with Swiggy as a regional supply head for North. As part of regional supply head, I head supplier priorities, which is everything to do with restaurant partner experience, partner growth, and account management perspective. I've just recently moved to a different role, which is also within Swiggy, and now I'll be looking after entire 2 states of India from complete growth, delivery, and supply perspective. So as I'll be talking about how Swiggy and entire food delivery marketplace is a 3-way marketplace, hyper local. So there's a lot more complex in that sense. And before that, I worked with Snapdeal for about 4.5 years. So I have about 11 years of experience within retail and e-retail and retail industries. And I've had extremely good learning with respect to solving the problems, and especially during pandemic and COVID. I think Swiggy went out and they just swiftly adapted, and we're so agile to have a full stack in place to ensure that we could just stay relevant. And I'm just talking about the first wave when probably everything was shut, and within 2 days of that shutdown, we figured out there's something that we can do and contribute. And that's sort of fulfilling for me to be part of this organization and continue to solve more and more relevant problems. So looking forward to this discussion, which is more on the last mile and overall, I think, agile supply chain. Thank you.
Thank you, Mansi, and we look forward to hearing about how Swiggy was able to become more agile during the pandemic. Satendra Kumar Patak, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your role within Adani? Okay, we seem to have an issue with Satendra. I'm not sure if they're on the line, but let's move on to Sugat Dutta from DP World. Can you please tell us a little bit about yourself and your role within DP World?
Sure. Thanks, George, and good afternoon to all my fellow participants. So I look after the digital transformation and solutions for DP World. We traditionally were a large ports and terminal operators, and now the aspiration is to move into the supply chain area, wherein once the goods land into the port, and from that point onwards, how do we ensure that there is a seamless supply chain that has been offered to solutions that have been offered to our clients. So, say for example, some of the participants like Landmark Group, so some of them would be and some of them are or were in my career stint so far were my clients, I would say. Landmark still is our client through one of our entities, and that's what it is. And in terms of agile supply chain, I would be excited to hear from our fellow participants and learn from them. But prior to this, I was with DHL supply chain, wherein the major focus was on retail, wherein we had set up some large DCs in and around India to support the supply chain that was prevailing that time. But from that point onwards, I think we have moved on. It's more of a hybrid model, wherein it's platforms as well as a physical infrastructure, which is getting more popular now. And I think it is going to continue from here on. So that's about me. Thanks, George.
Thank you, Sugat. And do we have Santosh Kumar on the line? Okay, it doesn't look like we do either. So thank you to our wonderful panelists for that fantastic introduction. I'm really looking forward to this discussion. Now, I think due to the pandemic, we have seen a lot of people ordering more and more of the essential items online. And from my own personal experience, part of the reason why I have my new COVID coat, I know from lockdowns here, is food is one of those items that we actually do get. So I would like to learn a little bit more about the challenges of food delivery, for instance, especially when customers are expecting faster and faster delivery. So I guess from my perspective, Mansi, you talked about agility, but sort of what were some of the key challenges that you had when it comes to delivery, and especially that last mile that you mentioned?
Sure. Well, the beauty of internet startup is the customer centricity. So let's think consumer backwards and try simplifying this whole problem, the core problem that we're trying to address in the food delivery industry. So here's a simple yet very powerful statement. I want food delivered right now from the restaurants near me. Now let's sort of break it down, right? So I want food, which is essentially your consumer demand and your consumer asking for food. I want food delivered to me, so which is essentially your delivery agents, of course, right now. Right now is essentially nothing but on-demand delivery. Not 2 hours, not 2 slots, not after 3 days, right now. And thankfully, industry standard of right now is 30 minutes in delivery industry, in food delivery especially. From the restaurants, so restaurant, which is the third cog in the wheel, which is essentially the whole thing that I was trying to say, the third cog in the wheel, and near me, which is essentially hyperlocal. So 5 elements, which is your customer, your delivery agents, your restaurant partners, on-demand delivery, and hyperlocal. That's essentially the essence of food delivery industry as a whole. So the thing is, food delivery, as I said earlier, also the food delivery marketplace specifically is a 3-party hyperlocal marketplace versus e-commerce, which is largely a 2-party, especially for national listing, etc. Right? So I'm going to discuss some of the challenges emanating from these 3 stakeholders, and of course, ensuring on-demand delivery and hyperlocal as part of it. So to deliver within the timeline, you have to first define the timeline, right? You have to first, that is the first challenge itself, which is what is the customer expectation setting? Is it 30 minutes? Is it 45 minutes? Is it 1 hour, 2 hours, right? So what is this promised SLA? And how accurately can you determine it and then adhere to it? Have you considered the restaurant type, the cuisine type, the last mile distance, rain, seasonality, and just to show the promised SLA on the app, right? So that's the first challenge itself. How accurately do you determine the promised SLA? Now, once that is done, we are left with just the SLA compliance. And that's where from the delivery agent point of view, I've covered the customer point of view, the delivery agent point of view kicks in. The biggest challenge within this, and of course, I would say about 70% of it is what we continue to focus on, is the availability or the serviceability of delivery agents, which is the result of accurate demand prediction and supply planning. What are the inputs considered for planning, right? So plethora of challenges like hiring, attrition, delivery agent customer experience, and the competitive payout and incentive, just to keep the fleet running, ready and kicking. So that's the first thing. As long as I've got my availability and serviceability is all right, I know my 70% of the problems are sorted. Then, of course, you have to ensure that the assignment is done on time and there is no delay whatsoever, and the rejection done by delivery agents, etc., are minimized. So my first leg and my first mile is sorted if I get all of these things right. Now, I've got my order has been assigned, and that order assignment, my delivery guy is ready to go and then pick up the order. That's where the onus of the restaurants come into the picture, right? So from the restaurant point of view, the challenge is to prepare and pack the food within the timelines and give signal to the delivery agent on time. So if the promised SLA has not accounted for, let's say, time to make a curry versus time to make a roll accurately, or single order versus bulk order, then the chances are that the preparation is going to take a lot of time. It's going to increase my SLA, and that will lead to essentially delays, right? So that's where, so my first mile is sorted. My last mile is when the order is picked up and it is delivered to the destination. My mostly last leg is sorted because of the algorithms that are in place. But first leg and last mile is sorted, and then in between, the restaurant part is also restaurant or store or whatever it is, that itself is to be sorted, right? So in nutshell, ensuring the entire leg of the delivery has minimal breaking points, that is what we deal with day in, day out. And as long as we, very, very simply, and I've done, supply front, I'm doing delivery front right now, it has to be simple. And if all of these little moment of truths are sorted, I think you're going to have a smooth SLA. And proud to say that we deliver within 35 minutes, 34 minutes, right? And it varies, of course. Like in Lucknow, I'm going to be delivering in 40 minutes because of the amount of curries that you have. But probably in Delhi and, of course, the whole agility of the market, I'll deliver in 35 minutes. So I think as long as these are the challenges which I face day in, day out, and both food delivery and essential delivery services.
Thank you, Mansi. And I think that 25-minute delivery is pretty good considering some of the delivery times that I've had. Yeah, I want to switch to a slightly different industry, and hopefully one that's less complex, because it sounds like from Mansi's perspective, we're kind of, it's almost like the manufacturing is happening on the go, and therefore, the times may shift drastically. I wanted to try and get a deeper understanding from kind of the retail perspective. So what are the challenges that retailers are facing to provide e-commerce? So Anil Menon and Dr. Anil Shinatabanda, I'd like to get your input. So Anil Menon, can you kickstart us off? What do you see as the challenges in terms of e-commerce from the retailer's perspective?
Sure. Thanks, George. First, what is the roadmap? So that's the key underlining statement here, right? What's your roadmap on e-commerce? So if everyone is driving for 2 hours and 30 minutes, and obviously I will not be competing with Swiggy. I will collaborate with Swiggy at this point of time rather than competing with them. So the point where we come to, and what strategy your players place across, is what are the assortments you have to be live with or need to be in stock with for delivering in the set point of time. So say, let me take a case of grocery, right? In grocery, 2 hours is a good time, because your bill is like what, 80% of the stocks are the same, right? The articles are the same, 20% vary. So how can I pick faster? So the challenges which largely lies with e-commerce and how it works for retailers. One, the strategy should be clear and what are your roadmaps. Second, what are your assortments and where do you want to deliver it from, right? We always have this concept of delivering from DC or delivering from warehouse. How can you make it hyper-local? Learn it from Swiggy, learn it from Zomato's and others of the world. How can you make it hyper-local easier for you? So do you want to have a dark store? Do you want to keep your own stores running and so on and so forth? So that's the second strategy, and that's a huge challenge. It's not as easy as spoken about, right? Real estate and running costs and so on and so forth. The third comes is how much of automation can you do? And for doing an automation, the whole team as an organization need to be sitting across a table, figuring out what are your processes, what are their shortcomings for now, and how much of this can be automated. The fourth part of this pillar is the skill sets. Who are your partners in terms of delivery? Their brand ambassadors, as always they talk about, right? The last mile, how are they delivering it, and so on and so forth. So largely, I see this four as the challenges and which need to be sorted while you're doing an e-commerce strategy. Most of this still lies with the assortments, which you want to keep it right next to your customer so that the delivery slots are being fulfilled.
What is that local connection? Dr. Anil, what's your take on this? How do you see the challenges that you're facing in terms of this, to be able to provide e-commerce to your customers?
Well, thanks, George. I think it's a very, very pertinent and it's a very kind of a burning question, so to say, in the current mindsets, right? To even before even I begin to answer that, I mean, what is actually Landmark Group doing in India? I mean, we had already embarked upon the journey of omni retail almost about 3 years ago. So we were already in a great position to kind of mix online to offline, offline to online in that sense. Because we also have the luxury of around 600 plus stores actually right across the country, 100 plus cities actually. We already had our own, online store actually, which was running for the last 2-3 years, as well as we were also present on the marketplaces. So that kind of gave us already a good head start, so to say. When the pandemic hit, actually, what happened to us? Who's our customer, by the way? I mean, for fashion retail, my customer is the queen. It's actually like the young mothers or young ladies, in fact, like Mansi, who they are our customers actually. So my customer is actually the queen for me. So what does the queen do? She has a beautiful thing called smartphone in her hands actually, and then she can really either make my life, or she can ruin my life as a retailer. So why am I saying that? Is because I mean, if I put something on the catalog, something on the digital, something on the social media, if I'm not able to service that within probably a reasonable amount of time, maybe a day or 2 or 3 days and so on, depending on where you are actually in India. So if I do a good job, I get lots of references, lots of thumbs ups and so on. So lots of actually, social media, good talk, NPS, all of that will go up. What happens if I don't do? The reverse happens actually. My reputation actually goes through the door before in fact. What happened during pandemic is suddenly, when everything was shut down, we kept the engagement going with the customer all along. Whether we were selling to them or not, we kept the engagement going. So we clearly understood within the first 6 weeks of lockdown, we understood that kids at home didn't stop growing. Women wanted to look even good at home. So there was a huge latent need actually for buying the apparel, footwear, accessories, all of that. When even, when you were in the middle of the lockdown. So which meant the moment slowly the lockdown started opening up, our e-commerce demand shot up because we were still not allowed to open the brick and mortar stores, right? So our actually business went up the roof, in fact, 6 to 10 times actually at times. So we quickly had to gather around and then find people because most of the people had gone back to their native places and so on. And then we had to, open up the warehouses, move the inventory because inventory was scattered around all around the, country and so on. So we had to organize a lot of these things in a quick succession because like Mansi said, it is that on demand, which is a time sensitive actually issue was there with my customer because she was eager to buy. Kids wanted clothing at home. She wanted to also have a lot more options actually of comfort wear, knitwear, or sleepwear, or some of those, casual wear and so on. She wanted to actually have some variety at home also. So the huge, requirement actually popped up immediately, for which we had to actually do multiple things, right? From inventory redistribution, finding people, and then sometimes reskilling them, upgrading the infrastructure actually, thanks to the help of people like, Saugat from DP World and so on. They are an important part of our, supply chain infrastructure. So, some of those actually help also came through. Plus, most importantly, our factories, we had to change from fashion to comfort wear. All of a sudden, fashionability went through the door. People didn't want any more trendy clothing. They wanted comfortable clothing, but they wanted to look good even at home. So we had to quickly change our fashion lines and so on, or core lines or basics and so on. So that way, multiple, in fact, aspects that we had to attend at once, so that by end of May, within about probably 2 months' time, we were able to actually get up our e-commerce capabilities to almost like 4 to 6x. Again, with the partners' help, with the factory's help, and with our own actually employees and so on. So we were able to do that. So these are some of the challenges around immediately post-pandemic. Even though we had an NTP, I call it as normal temperature pressure journey of e-commerce, prior to the pandemic, but pandemic gave us a turbocharge, which means we had to all of a sudden increase all these capabilities, which we were able to successfully do. And currently we are enjoying, shipping out almost more than 100,000 pieces per day and so on, which is a phenomenal actually aspect if you look at 18 months ago. So that's been the journey so far, and then lots of challenges and lots of learning, but a great opportunity to satisfy my lady customer queen. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Anil. Now, Saugat, first of all, I take my hat off to anyone in the logistics industry. Everyone in the logistics industry has been doing an amazing job. Now, I'm going to ask you the question of what the challenges are, but I kind of get the feeling that you're going to say increased volume pretty much overnight. Is that true?
Yeah. So, George, yes, just to answer that, yes, we were categorized under the essential services. So we were operating all our terminals, all our railway units, warehouses. Even during the pandemic, we were operating, and we had to support our clients. And thanks, Anil, for the compliment. I'll pass it on to the teams as well, that we have been able to at least meet your expectations. So coming to the challenges, definitely, in terms of keeping the operating units open, because just to give the complete panel a brief. So we not only do ports and terminals, which has been our traditional businesses, we also operate 30 odd rakes within the country. Rakes as in the trains, the goods train that move from point A to point B. We operate CFSs, which complement our ports and terminals entities. So we have got around 6 odd CFSs, and then we also have got warehouses, cold chain, and now we are coming up with our own free trade warehousing zones, which all were, more or less operational, I would say, as and when we were getting opportunities. And terminals definitely were 24/7, because we were also supporting Government of India, because at that point in time, vaccines were getting imported, then oxygen had to be imported and then moved across the country to several locations. So all that has been kept us busy. So coming to the challenges, I would say more than the challenges, those were opportunities for us. We learned it through those 18 months. We were never that aggressive. Because of our clients, we had to ensure that we are right up to our toes. We start to understand their planning, because it was I would say these 18 months, everyone was agile, whether they like it or not, they had to be. Okay. And we as service providers to them, we wanted to ensure that we support, because we have built up the assets here as well as in few other countries. So as and when there are any needs that requires those assets to be used effectively, we were able to do that. Okay, so now how do we move ahead from here? So I strongly feel that a lot of the service offerings that we do also depends upon the planning and the strategy that Anil Menon was mentioning. that, because we are service providers to some of these large organizations. So we would need to know the strategies well in advance so that we can do our planning. Okay, we have got a greater control on the assets, so we can flex, the services accordingly and ensure that bespoke services are offered. But the key over here would be forecasting, planning, and then ensuring that we continuously have dialogues to ensure that we are probably one of the stakeholders while the discussions are going on amongst the organizations, so that we support either the omni-channel mode or we support the retail mode or an online mode. So we are now working towards integrating with some of the client applications so that some of these things also become super easy for us to execute. So these are a couple of things, George, I would say. But as I said, the last 18 months was agile for everyone. And I think a huge learning, and the way forward would be typically be a hybrid model. It will definitely not be, because now people are used to it. So customers who used to probably go to a store, now they are experiencing the ease of getting the same things by browsing through the phones and ordering it, and then ensuring that it is getting delivered. So pretty similar to that, I see that there is going to be a large shift in terms of ordering patterns, in terms of visiting some of these malls or these outlets, and then also ensuring that you get the convenience. So these are a couple of things from my side, I would say.
Excellent, thank you. Now, just to follow up on that, I think one of the things that we keep hearing a lot about in terms of especially logistics is the use of technology and the use of automation. Where do you see that fitting into building in agility into the supply chain?
So George, automation is no longer an ask; it is a need now. Okay. It is, so some of these things like providing visibility, tracking, tracing, this ideally has become a hygiene factor these days. Earlier, it used to be part of the customer's wish list, but now how good is your visibility? How good is your, the ability to provide real-time dashboards and ensuring that, there are control tower models that continuously alert our customers that, hey, there is a possibility of this shipment getting delayed and stuff like that. So I over the last couple of years, at least in my career stint, this is what has been my experience. See, customers do understand that there could be certain challenges or issues while, they partner with companies like us or like DHLs or equivalent of us, I would say. But the key is to keep them informed, okay, and ensure that there is a corrective action that has been taken so that it doesn't get repeated. Once it becomes repetitive in nature, then there is a loss of trust. But if it is informed and there are corrective actions that have been taken, and we are ensuring that right kind of visibility, right kind of service levels are provided, I think customers are fairly reasonable. And this is not a phenomenon only in India. This is what we have seen overseas as well, while we deal with some of the import shipments that come in, because in one of my stints, I was also supporting just in time for the likes of some of the auto manufacturers. So, the likes of Ford, the likes of Hyundai and all. So they wanted us to keep them informed much before the event is actually going to disrupt their operations, and then take some corrective actions pertaining to that. So coming to your question, automation is definitely catching up, but at the same time, there is an element of cost angle as well, as against the number of people that get employed. So we need to have that trade-off accordingly done. And then if there is a need, so automation shouldn't be done for the sake of it, just by showing that, we have these things. It should be done through a proper study, and then ensuring that we have the right solutions. So as we say, fit for purpose solutions are implemented.
Yeah. So I completely agree with that. But one of the things that you hit on there was visibility. So Mansi, I guess with you, visibility would be one of those key elements that you want to give your customers. How do you do that, and how does technology play a role in providing that visibility, and does that visibility help provide agility?
Well, yes. So live order tracking is our USP. It's bread and butter. That's what we sell, frankly, right? And it's not just from the customer experience point of view. So one is, of course, all the information and nudges that we're sending out to the customer. That's very important. But from the delivery legs point of view, the entire aerial view of all the moments of truth, as I said earlier, which allows us to nudge the right message to the customer, take the information of any breaking point, as I said earlier, and then resolve real time, right? So also, like in case of delivery specifically, having a control tower totally makes sense in hyperlocal specifically, where delivery agents are specially mapped to a certain zones, and the moment they go to a different zone, and can be about 7 to 8 kilometers because it's hyperlocal, and the moment they move from those out of the radius of 8 kilometers to outside, the logins really start to drop. So in case there is an accident for that matter, or a vehicle facing an issue, so a customer would be seeing that my order is getting delayed, right? Because he's getting minute on minute update that my partner has reached the restaurant and it's cooking, it's been picked up. So the last mile, if you see that there is a delay and it's expected to reach in 10 minutes, but there is a delay, then the control tower really looks into it and see if there is a vehicle issue or there's a traffic issue, there are strikes, etc. And then those guys, so one is, of course, this is an amalgamation of, because it's a startup, it's an amalgamation of technology and of course all the entire human capital that we have on ground who take the input that they get from the technology and then work real time to serve the orders. For example, if the delivery guy cannot really do that, can I send someone as a backup to really deliver that overall thing, right? So as an example, one real-time communication when which is very, very relevant in food delivery, and it's a necessary evil, right? Like when the unpredictable rain happens. So ideally, you know that September is a month of rain. I got to plan my demand according to that. I got to plan my surges, like the amount of money that I'm going to pay to my partners, delivery partners, right at the beginning. That should be known. But if unpredictably the rain happens, and I see the serviceability is gone for a toss, and then immediately, if I want more and more delivery agents to be on the field, I need to pay them more. So the mode has to be switched on, and I have to real time communicate to them what is the earnings going to be if they continue to operate, right? And that can only happen when the real time communication is established. So the whole intricacy of the different apps, partner app, which is restaurant app, delivery apps, consumer apps, and the whole network of all of these communication that we build together and the control tower team which handles it, I think that leads to, that's really, really important in hyperlocal, frankly.
Thank you, Mansi. I think one of the things that I've taken away from that is kind of that collaboration between apps. Now, we are unfortunately running out of time, but I want to try and get a couple of points from the retail side of things regarding agility and its link to basically the inventory visibility and the technology. So, Dr. Anil, if I can just get you in a couple of minutes, what's your take on this? How do you see visibility and agility being linked together and technology driving this?
Well, George, I think, it's just a continuation of what Mansi is saying. She's talking about from the customer or consumer front, right? And for me, actually, it's an end-to-end visibility. I mean, right from the, the factories or the, raw materials, in fact, all the way to the consumer journey, the entire consumer journey, we need to create as transparent, dashboarding or as transparent actually flow of information is possible, in fact, because all the key stakeholders, like what Shaukat was talking about that, right? We need to make sure that we are transparent and then we are actually in communication in real time, actually with our suppliers and then partners, as well as, in some sense, actually, even with the consumers also. Because right now, thanks to the probably the e-commerce, actually the giants of Amazons and Flipkarts of the world in India, now customer knows, you can't actually give any spin to the customer. Now every customer, she knows about what is pick, pack and ship, what is track and trace, what is actually a delivery partner. She knows everything about actually logistics and supply chain. So in that sense, you cannot hide actually anywhere right now. Fortunately, even the boards or the senior management or the stakeholders have understood that the supply chain visibility is utmost important. Therefore, we have also invested into that and kind of, making sure that right from our supplier or actually service provider, our own staff, our own operations, and all the way to our be it stores, actually, if you are using them as a dark stores and so on, or the consumer, that journey has to be as frictionless and as smooth as possible. That's the only way you can actually make it work. So that's where we are investing, and we are actually, trying to excel. George?
So, thank you, Dr. Anil. So, Anil Menon, just to finish off with you, just very quickly, one of the key things that we've talked about is that end-to-end, that real-time. What's your take on this? And is visibility in technology a driver of agility within the supply chain?
Thanks, George. And I agree to what Anil said and what Mansi spoke about. Visibility end-to-end is for sure, but also you have to look at from a technology standpoint or from an internal standpoint of view. How are you making sure that the functions which are there understands the visibility and delivers it in the same manner? In the sense, while the customer is acquainted of, or as Anil spoke about, all the phases of logistics, we need to make sure that internally the functions are also has ownership around this part of it, right? What I mean to say is that if an MDM guy, a master data management guy, does a mistake, a small mistake, and it was previously told that we will do it later, or the impact was small, we have to now educate him to show that what is the impact of his smaller errors at the last mile. So a lot of education around that process improvement and a fallback. What we miss around this whole visibility is a fallback. If you're giving a lot of visibility, you're also opening a Pandora box or a floodgate for everyone to work around it. There's negativity coming out, there are suggestions which will come out, there are feedbacks which are going to come up. And how, as technologists, are you going to make sure that this barrier is seamless, if I have to say, if I have to make it a point, saying that how this whole transition is seamless is something which is the current state of affairs around in retail for sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Anil. And thank you very much to all our panelists. Anil Menon, thank you very much for your time. It was good speaking to you again. Dr. Anil Shinatabanda, have yourself a great afternoon. Thank you for spending time with us. Mansi Pakidi, thank you again. Sugat Dutta, again, thank you. And wish all of you stay safe and healthy, as well as your families. With that, it's time to wrap this session up. Thank you for joining us for Hyper-Agile Supply Chains, Mastering the Success Mantra of E-Commerce Order Fulfillment, as part of the Internet Commerce Summit 2021. My name has been George Purpose. It's been an absolute honor to be with you this afternoon and this morning. Please stay safe, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgie.
Thank you, George. Thanks,
Thanks, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye.
Very insightful.